Well, there's two main sets of obstacles from the opposition's perspective, the first of which is preconditions. Now, the opposition have been talking for some time about possible preconditions to any peace talks. Among them were the lifting of sieges in Syria and also the stopping of airstrikes. Now, the lifting of sieges is a very serious issue in Syria. Just recently, the UN said that the number of places under siege in Syria increased from 15 to 18, putting the number of people in what are described as very hard to reach locations as high as 500,000. Of course, they're in danger not only from ongoing fighting, but also from shortages in basics, even food. So that's one of the issues that we understand now they would like to see met before they go to any talks. And the second, as I just mentioned, would be the lifting of airstrikes. But they've said this to the UN. The UN, of course, as we understand it, has replied that, of course, they don't have the authority to implement such measures. Even in UN resolutions, for instance, it's up to individual countries to vote for themselves and the like. So it's difficult to see how those conditions could be met at this late stage. The second thing is as to who will be at the meeting. Now, the opposition met, or the largest umbrella grouping of them met back in December in Riyadh, and came up with a committee to choose individuals to negotiate on their behalf, and then chose individuals themselves. But they're now concerned that other invitations have been made to the peace talks. And that they see that they should have the sole right to negotiate on behalf of the opposition. So that's also a stumbling block. And they've asked for clarification as to who else might have been invited and what their role would be. But really, at this late, sort of last-minute juncture, it's very difficult to see how these obstacles are going to be overcome with talks slated to begin tomorrow.
Indeed, and Adam, as you mentioned, there are stopping of airstrikes, a major issue. Now, this Thursday, there are reports that at least 44 civilians have died in suspected Russian air raids in parts of northern and eastern Syria. These are areas under IS control. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, this is in two locations, the first of which is Deir ez-Zor in eastern Syria, villages rather east of the town of Deir ez-Zor in the province of the same name, where some 29 civilians were killed, but then also strikes in al-Bab, northern Aleppo province, where a further 15 civilians were killed. Now, the source for this is the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, who also say that since Russian airstrikes began, they've killed as many as 1,000 civilians. But I should stress that they also say that US airstrikes have killed more than 320 civilians in Syria. And in fact, that number would be higher if you looked at civilians who have been killed in Iraq at the same time. Of course, both the US and the Russia deny that these or contest those figures. The Russians going as far as to call them absolutely absurd. But quite aside from the human suffering that they're causing, the deaths, the casualties, the loss of homes, businesses, livelihoods, heritage, and so on, it's also linked into, as we were just saying, to the peace talks, because one of those preconditions, as we understand it, is that airstrikes should stop. And of course, if they're being carried out on this scale, up to this point, just before the peace talks start, it's very difficult to see again how they would that they're going to stop before those peace talks due tomorrow.